you say you're not the bad type. And I try, yeah, I try to be the good guy, but you still lie. And you say you're not the bad side. And I try,
Hey everyone, my name's Corey of Armchair Athletes. First live stream, we are going to go through some waivers, some waiver wire pick up targets that I think all of you should definitely go after to try and help your team out. A lot of these guys they're owned in a low percentage of leagues, at least right now, but you need to get on it. The worse record that you have, or the lesser of a record you have, however you want to put it, the more poor of a record you have, the better chance you have of getting these guys, but it's also first come, first serve, depending on the league you're in. Let me slow down a bit, though. Thank you for all of your support so far on the shorts, if you're joining me from that. I really appreciate you a ton. I think that we've taken off pretty well, and just trying to help everybody out with their fantasy teams as much as possible has been my goal. So yeah, I'm Corey of Armchair Athletes. Make sure you follow us on all of our socials, links in description. So on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, I believe I have all 3 of those in there. Like this video, it will help a ton. And then comment any questions that you have about fantasy football. Doesn't have to be on waivers. This is the first one we're doing, and I just want to make this kind of an open seminar. So whatever that comes up to mind, just comment, and we'll do a little research together on here, and I'll do everything I can to answer your question as thorough as possible. Hey, Tino, I see you in the chat there. Nice to see you here. Tino's been huge and just helping me set up streaming, helping me with designs on Canva, the thumbnails, the whole 9 yards. So huge shout out to you, Tino. I'll be looking forward to answering your questions in a little bit. So now, here are some waivers, or some guys on the waiver wire that I think that you should pick up in week 6, whether, you're 4-1 or you're 1-4, 0-5, 5-0. I'm sure everyone is a little bit in between. I'm in 4 leagues myself, so hopefully some of the guys in my fantasy league don't see this, but if they do, I guess I'm doing you a solid. But nonetheless, let's start out with the first one. We've got Geno Smith, okay? I completely doubted this man, 100% doubted him. Going into this week, I thought that for sure, he's going up against defenses like the Lions. He's able to make them look vulnerable. They are vulnerable, and he's able to really make them look silly and cut them all up. I'm like, no, this is where it stops, right? This is exactly where it stops. The New Orleans Saints will surely stop him. They didn't. Geno Smith is him. He went toe-to-toe with one of the tougher secondaries in the NFC in New Orleans, where I expected him to fold. You can look on my previous shorts. This page is about full transparency. I said Geno Smith will not be able to do well. I know he's got the weapons of Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf, but it doesn't matter. He lit them up like a Christmas tree. Look, the Seahawks didn't win that game, but we don't care about that as fantasy owners. We care that he's getting touchdowns, that he's scoring points. He had 268 passing yards, 3 touchdowns versus the Saints, and he's had no turnovers, 2 contests in a row, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. You saw it on the lower third graphic a little bit ago. Geno Smith is that guy. He's not owned in as many leagues as he should be for someone who's considered a top 6 quarterback in fantasy PPR. I think he passes the eye test, and I think he merits a very thorough look. So pick up Geno Smith if you want a really high-end backup quarterback, or my goodness, if your quarterback goes down or it's on a bye week, if you have, a Justin Herbert when he had the rib injury, or if you have a Dak Prescott or a Tua Tagovailoa, maybe Geno Smith, who's been flying very low under the radar considering how many points he's been scoring, is the answer for you. So next person we're going to focus on, we're going to stay on the same team, Kenneth Walker III. So Rashad Penny goes down, right? Rashad Penny goes down for the year with a broken fibula. That can't feel good at all. And now it is time for Kenneth Walker III, the standout out of Michigan State, was in the Heisman conversation. So he makes me super excited. Nonetheless, Kenneth Walker has averaged 6.3 yards per carry on 23 rushes so far. I know, here comes the argument, right? And I make it all the time myself. Small sample size. It doesn't mean a whole lot. Maybe he's been playing against some weak defenses. Okay, let's go to Rashad Penny, the guy in front of him who just went down. He had 57 rushes, and he averaged 6.1 yards per carry himself. I mean, that's a combination of Seattle's offensive line staying relatively healthy, right? And Geno Smith being off the walls in terms of passing. Joe Mama Productions, nice to see you here. I appreciate you really commenting on all those shorts, so welcome. If you have any questions, you or Tino or anybody else in this chat, drop them right now. I appreciate your support, and I'm going to do everything I possibly can in the name of research to help you out. So back to Kenneth Walker III. I really think he's going to excel as Rashad Penny did and as he has himself because of the combination of Seattle's healthy offensive line and Geno Smith's ability to toss it through the air at a very consistent, a very high, a very productive rate. We talk about turnovers. He's only had 2 interceptions through the first 5 weeks, those 9 passing touchdowns. When you have an amazing passing attack like the Seahawks have right now, which, look, I didn't expect, it's going to be a lot easier to run the ball up the gut. Those linebackers are going to play a lot more back. You're going to have more guys in the secondary deciding, hey, let me go back, drop back into coverage, and make sure Geno doesn't dot me up. And that's when guys like Kenneth Walker III come in. Tino, you're 1-4. I'm going to help you out as much as I can, buddy. I know multiple people who have been commenting on the shorts have said, hey, my league doesn't do trades. My commissioner's got a waiver limit. We're going to cover all that today, so just be patient. But Tino, I've been there many, many, many a times. We're going to help you out with your 1-4 team, whether it be who to start and who to sit, what waiver guys we could pick up, and we're halfway through almost. Let's go to the third guy. Let's go to the wide receiver position. I tried to get one from each one, and we threw a flex in there later as well. Let's go to Josh Reynolds, okay? Now, here's a guy. Let me sound like Chris Collinsworth real quick. He is the wide receiver 2 right now in the depth chart for the Detroit Lions. Now, the Detroit Lions were the number 1 offense. This is a stat everybody's been hearing, for the last, couple of weeks, and now the last couple of days since they got shut out by the New England Patriots. They were the number 1 offense going into that Week 5 matchup against New England. Bill Belichick, the genius that he is, drew as much up as he could to shut that team down. Here's what's promising for me, okay? Because you probably are all wondering, my goodness. Corey, what on earth are you doing talking about the wide receiver 2 for a team that just got shut out 29-0? Here's my thing. He did fine. He scored in the double digits. Josh Reynolds is the clear-cut number 2 option on the Lions behind Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's already had some injuries. He's got 19 receptions, 269 yards, and 1 touchdown, at least 8 targets each game in his last 3 games. That's double-digit fantasy points in 4 straight weeks. Even in that most recent 29-0 shutout by the Patriots, he found a way. That's what I like, guys. I like when somebody gets shut out. The Lions had 0 points. To see a wide receiver still be able to pull through, whether it be through sheer volume, productivity out in the open field, yards after catch, which we see a little bit of everything from that with Josh Reynolds. I like to see guys pull through in tough offensive games and still get their job done for their fantasy owners. Obviously, that's not their priority. But I've been watching Josh Reynolds, and I think he's huge. Joe Mama Productions, yeah. Kenneth Walker waiver right now. If he's on the waiver, I would definitely go out and get him. And we'll talk about long-term and short-term investments. Do you want to flip somebody around for a high value and trade him off? Or do you want to hold on to somebody for sheer points? Your team is 3-2. 3-2 solid. I got some teams at 3-2 too, but let's try and help you break that bubble and maybe even, get into the playoffs if you aren't already in a spot to be there. So back to Josh Reynolds. So Josh Reynolds, at the very least, when the Lions get Jameson Williams, DJ Chark, other weapons back, I honestly think, yep, exactly. There's Chark, right? When those guys come back, okay, if you are not comfortable with Josh Reynolds anymore as that wide receiver 2 and you think somebody else like a Jameson Williams, like a Chark is going to take over, you don't think there's going to be enough time, enough space, enough reps to spread out to everyone, sell him. See when Chark comes back, see when Jameson Williams, that's a big one, out of Alabama comes back, and then sell him. Let the value get high. The value is high right now. You could take Josh Reynolds in, and I used to do this all the time, and sell him off a day or 2 later. The bottom line is, guys, he's had 4 weeks in a row with double-digit fantasy points in standard PPR format. If you don't have him as a long-term investment, maybe you pick up a Josh Reynolds, which nobody else was really watching. I'm choosing guys who are flying under the radar, guys. And maybe you include him in a trade package to try and go get a Christian Kirk, an Amon-Ra St. Brown, a DeAndre Swift. I'm obviously naming a lot of guys around him on the Lions right now. Maybe you get an all-purpose back. Maybe you get a tight end you've been looking for. You are trying to harness some high value out of these people. Josh Reynolds doesn't have to be the answer for a while. Just because I am telling you to pick somebody up off the waiver wire, that does not mean by any means that they're a long-term solution. So we'll talk about that. But with Josh Reynolds, I'd say he's more on the latter. He's more of a short-term solution. He was kind of the wide receiver 1 for Detroit before Amon-Ra St. Brown broke out in the latter half of the 2021 season. But I really think with the target share that Josh Reynolds has been getting over the course of the last few games, and the fact that he's still put up double digits in a 29-0 shutout against the Patriots, there's a lot of appeal there. There really is, and I think in the next few games, the Lions are getting the 4th place schedule from the NFC North, which that's what they finished last year. It's what they're in this year. They're going to have some vulnerable secondaries, so stash Josh Reynolds. I see that terminology used all the time with waivers. Stash him. I think he's a good one to just have on your lineup. He's probably better than the 2nd or 3rd or, the worst guy on your bench. So play a little mix and match there for sure. Let's move on to the tight end position. I think that this guy's been doing some things that have really impressed me. Again, loaded wide receiving core. We're talking about Hayden Hurst on the Cincinnati Bengals. Stash him too. Double-digit fantasy points over the course of the last few weeks. Joe Burrow has plenty of options. We're talking about Jamar Chase. We're talking about Tyler Boyd. We're talking about T. Higgins. But he's throwing the ball 38.2 times per game. And in today's tight end market, where it's Mark Andrews, it's Travis Kelce, it's George Kittle, that's about it at times, it seems like. You're going to want guys who are depth pieces like Hayden Hurst. And Hayden Hurst has that high value because he's had those double-digit fantasy points over the course of the last couple of weeks. At the very least, you have a guy you can sell for value if he keeps this traction up. He had the sweet victorious game against the Baltimore Ravens, who actually ended up winning the game, but he won some of your fantasy leagues if you had him already. Let's see what we've got for questions here. I promise I take these as they come. Just accepted a trade. I get Jamar Chase, Antonio Gibson, and the Bucs backup running back for Ty Boyd, Devin Duvernay, and Tony Pollard. So you are getting Chase. I love Chase. You're talking about a top 10 guy there. And we'll talk about this in other videos. Maybe it's later today. I'll do a little pull-up on the stats too. There is no wrong answer when it comes to Cincinnati's wide receiving core because 1, Joe Burrow throws it a ton. 2, the offensive line is improving. And 3, he spreads it out so much that you can have Chase, you can have Boyd, and you can have Higgins all have great first days. So we're looking at Jamar Chase, Antonio Gibson, who's had a little bit of lower production as of late, but that's honestly just because Washington's been so god-awful they don't want to run the ball anymore. And then the Bucs backup running back for Ty Boyd, Devin Duvernay, and Tony Pollard. You've got Joe Burrow as well. I always love those quarterback wide receiver tandems, if you will, when they go up against vulnerable defenses. We know what Joey B can do down the field. Didn't have the best week last week. I think that's a great trade, man. And if you guys ever want to run trades by me, I'll gladly do that in real time on here as well. Sticking to the Bengals, Hayden Hurst, I think, is a guy that you can really squeeze some value out of. I'm not going to sit here and tell you I think he's going to be your answer till week 17. But hey, if your tight end's got a week off, or if you have Darren Waller, I'm talking to you, Tino, if you're still watching. I have Darren Waller on a couple teams where they're just starting to lay eggs. At least you've got a guy who is getting usage over the course of the last couple of games. So that's my answer at tight end for right now going into week 6. Things can change. Injuries, usage, reports in practice, all that good stuff. But we'll keep you up to date, on that for sure. Let's go to my flex position. We've got Mike Boone. This guy was not even in anybody's wheelhouse up until probably a few days ago. Let's see, Connell. Do I play Delvin Cook? He wasn't getting played, and when I finally took him off, he popped off against the Bears. So the Bears have one of the worst rushing defenses in the league, and that's public information. So we can kind of break through what I do going into each fantasy week and why I make the certain picks that I do. So Connell, I'm going to get to you once we are done with. I'm going to go Mike Boone, and then I'll go a defense I think should be started. All right, Connell, and then, buddy, we'll go right to Delvin Cook, the situation with him, why I think he's valid or not valid. I do like Cook in general. Thoughts on Aaron Jones? You guys have great questions. Jones and Dillon, that is a tandem that I think we're going to get there. I promise. Give me 2 minutes, guys. So that's Mike Boone, right? With Javonte Williams out and Melvin Gordon, who has had fumble issues in the past and is averaging 3.7 yards per carry ahead of him. I like Boone's odds of getting reps. 7 rushes for 38 yards. 3 receptions for 47 yards. And that was against an Indianapolis Colts team that really shut them down with no offense on either end. So Mike Boone has been getting more snaps each and every week. And I really think he's a productive option for sure. Boone actually nearly split reps with Melvin Gordon last week. So he had 30 snaps to Gordon's 39. Last one we'll do is the Rams, and then Connell and Caden, the Colts fan. Caden, I'll get to both of you in each of your situations. We'll do a little live studying here. I like both of these questions. And these are both questions I've asked myself as a fantasy owner in terms of making trades, dealing these guys, going after them, why I would not. So we'll get to you, Connell, and then we'll get to you, Caden, right afterwards. Defense, the Rams. Seems like a no-brainer. Joseph Palacios, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that. I have seen you supporting the videos as well. We will get to these 3 questions and any that come after, right after this. Promise, guys. I'll be super quick. So the Rams defense seems like a no-brainer coming into this year. But, they haven't had the best production. They're middle of the pack, okay? They haven't forced a turnover since week 2. So they played against the Arizona Cardinals. They played against the San Francisco 49ers. They played against the Dallas Cowboys. Those are pretty tough teams to get turnovers from for the most part. They've got varying situations. Reason I like the Rams, okay? 2+ sacks in 4 of their 5 games this year. You get a point a sack depending on the point format where you're playing. And now they get to go up against the Carolina team with everything falling apart. Baker Mayfield is doubtful. It's going to be P.J. Walker if he needs to come in. Matt Rule, gone. So you've got a new coach in there, trying to help the offensive coordinator, the tandem of play calling, as some would call it. So I just don't like the situation for the Panthers right now. And Carolina has given up the ball 7 times through 5 weeks. That's tied for 12th worst in the league. So we're talking about turnover production here. Fumbles recovered, interceptions, maybe even a pick 6 here or there. The Rams' defense is a lot better than they've been playing. Panthers have allowed 17 sacks on the season on their quarterbacks, so Baker Mayfield so far. That is 6th highest in the league. So guys, when I'm talking about defensive production, I'm really, in this case, targeting an offense that I don't think is going to produce very well. I don't think that, in all honesty, the Panthers are going to get a whole lot going. Why? Because they haven't gotten a whole lot going yet. So let's get to all of your questions here. I want to thank all of you who are watching currently. As they continue to come in, I'll continue to answer them. Do I play Delvin Cook? Connell is wondering. I don't hate Delvin Cook depending on the matchup. I definitely keep him on your team if cutting him is any concern at all. Look, he's getting poached right now. He's getting what you'd call vultured by Alexander Mattison. They're getting close to the goal line, and then Mattison gets used. But I do like Delvin Cook for a couple of reasons. First off, he's going to get sheer volume. Second off, the health has been there as of late. Delvin Cook, even as annoying as it seems, Connell, that he's not getting a whole lot of reps, he's got 81, I repeat, 81 rushing attempts through 5 games. We're looking at about 16 per game. He'll catch a few passes here and there. 373 yards on the ground. That's top 10 in the league. 3 touchdowns as well. 4.6 yards per carry. So if you look at this guy across the board, he's doing great things, and he's playing for a 4-1 football team. So some of this is bolstered by the fact they're winning, and they're going to try and run some time out. I'm going to pull some things up for you, Connell, here in a second, because I really do want to just focus on Delvin Cook's workload. As annoying as it has been seeing Alexander Mattison, we've had this conversation before, buddy, about where he's coming in. I really do like Delvin Cook for a multitude of reasons. Give me a second here, folks, and we'll get everything up. All right. Also, I hope all of you are doing very well. I'm going to get to the rest of these questions pretty soon. Appreciate you all coming on for the first live stream. So let's switch over here real quick. Here's what we got cooking for Delvin Cook, pun intended. I am looking at sheer volume here, Connell, all right? Especially if you play PPR. I mean, I'm looking at those catches too. The 11 that he has for 74 yards. And he's got no touchdowns speckled in, okay? So we've got week 1, 20 for 90, 4.5 yards per carry, 3 receptions for 18 yards. So you're looking at 4.8 plus 9. You're looking at 13.8 points, something you really can't complain about. This is where I'd get ticked off, right? It's against the Eagles. Here's the thing, Connell. If you watch that game, it was over before it started. When you have a matchup where you think that, unless this is a great pass-catching back, which Delvin Cook, he's up there, but he's not, an Austin Eckler or a Christian McCaffrey. I hate starting running backs in games I know they're going to lose. In games where I think the other team is just going to absolutely throttle them. Now, we didn't know a ton about the Eagles, but looking back at this data, where's the outlier, Connell? It's 6 rushes for 17 attempts against the Philadelphia Eagles defense that's been suffocating. We saw Justin Jefferson get shut down. Really nothing was working. But what's the last thing a football team wants to do when they're down 2, or in this case, 3 possessions? You don't want to run the ball. You're going to air it out. You're going to air it out to your KJ Osborns, your Adam Thielens, your Justin Jefferson, okay? That's exactly what you're going to do. So I really think sheer volume is not much of an issue, Connell, because if we scroll up, this man's got 81 rushes. This man's averaging over 16 touches per game on the ground. Hang in there on Delvin Cook. That's what I'm going to say, Connell. I think that he's fine. Look for those matchups. If you're kind of on the fence, 1, you can always go in and, send in a question, or you've got my contact information personally. We can go through that. 2, though, I mean, by all means, look at that matchup. Do you think, are they going up against a team like, I don't know, we'll say the Steelers, who are struggling? I would absolutely love that matchup for the Vikings. I think they'd win by a mile. Look what the Bills just did to them. I'm not calling the Vikings the Bills. I'd say run Delvin Cook all day long. TJ Watt's out. I mean, you've got so many things pointing in your favor. Run defense isn't as strong as it usually is. The front 7 struggling compared to, defenses as of late. I don't hate Delvin Cook. I hate Alexander Mattison at times because he does take those reps away. But the Vikings understand, that coaching staff understands that, especially when they need to ice a game. Excuse me, folks. giving it to Delvin Cook, your guy who's going to get 4.6 yards per carry, as you see in the top right hand of the screen. I mean, that's the answer. That is absolutely the answer, and that's something they're going to go after for a while. Oh, sorry about that. Let's go to that next question. Thoughts on Aaron Jones? Long term, I don't think Aaron Jones gets re-signed. I really think that A.J. Dillon, if he can continue the production. Now, he's been a little shaky the first couple of weeks. You know, A.J. Dillon is a guy who's producing a lot for somebody who's pushing 240. I mean, at his size. So, the sheer will of that man, you'd think he's just a fullback. He's just going to be in those goal-to-go situations. I don't hate it a whole lot, to be honest with you. And we'll look up a little more here, just to give you an idea of if... I don't know, Caden, are you considering, getting rid of Aaron Jones? Are you considering trading him? Are you considering swapping him out for a more productive back? Kind of give me a little more detail on that, and we'll go from there. Here's something I love to do, folks, and I'll pull it up here for all of you. Thank you all again for stopping in, by the way. This is going pretty well, I would say. Izo FN, I will get to you in a bit. Just making my way downtown. Making my way down the comments section. Okay. Trying to stack up in every position. I hear you, my good man. We're going to get there in a second. So, Aaron Jones. What's so concerning about Aaron Jones? This is what's so concerning about Aaron Jones for a lot of people. His touches are in parentheses here. I love to look at target share, folks, because sheer volume will sometimes help you get away with a lot. Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon are 50-50 right now. When you talk about pure touches, you even talk about rushes, and I know everyone's thinking, oh, A.J. Dillon's only a rushing back. He's been targeted 14 times. He's ran plenty of routes. He's actually got almost as many reception yards as Aaron Jones. This was kind of the case last year. Big difference between these two. Let me pause real quick. 75 touches, 72 touches. You're looking at this right now, and you're going, my goodness, what on earth do I do? It's 50-50. Bailey, thanks for coming in. What my issue with Aaron Jones originally would be with the eye test is, my goodness, look at all of the reps that A.J. Dillon is taking away. Here's my thing, folks, all right? Here's my one thing. What is one thing that stands out in here? You see similar snap count. Jones is actually in there. It's probably almost about 60-40. Okay, Caden? Yards per carry. Aaron Jones has been lighting the world on fire. I'm an Aaron Jones hater, not just because we'll get to you, Joe Mama Productions, on who I am a fan of. I'm not going to show it at all in here because they don't have a whole lot of fantasy caliber players. 6.4 yards per carry. That is something Matt LaFleur is going to go in and look at, all right? That is something this offense is going to pay attention to when they're setting up plays. That is something that so many... Actually, let's stay here. So many offensive coordinators are going to pay attention to. We've only got one score, but again, Aaron Jones, he's catching it a little bit more. He's got 14 receptions, 98 yards, 1 touchdown. We have a lot of running backs by committee. We don't have Derrick Henry's everywhere. We don't have Jonathan Taylor, and Hines gets used over there everywhere, all right? We were just talking about Delvin Cook. It's the same issue, guys. You're like, oh, Alexander Madison's getting the ball a few times a game. I'm mad. When you've got a guy who's, making more money right now, the front office is going to see him as more of an investment. Maybe they whisper into the coach's ear and say, hey, you better use him. I'm not sure what's going on behind closed doors, but what I do know is going on, and it's public information. It's this 6.4 yards per carry right here. I really do, I think the sheer production is not going to allow Aaron Jones to see a decrease in target. And look at this. Who do the Packers not have anymore? Devontae Adams. It's a story of 2022, right? Aaron Jones, 18-15, 19-15. A.J. Dillon, 19-14, 18-6. Up until last week, they were both getting double-digit touches. There's enough room for both of them, especially on an offense that's not going to emphasize passing nearly as much. So thank you very much for your question, Caden. I do appreciate it. Going to have to build up my endurance. You are used to hearing me do shorts, talk for 15 seconds. It's going to be a lot more than that on these. Joseph, just traded Mixon and Pittman for Kamara. I like that package a lot, Joseph. So I talked earlier, just to make sure I'm not, contradicting myself here. Talked earlier about how I believe the Bengals offensive line is improving. That does not mean they're good. That does not mean they're good by any means. And I'll show you why here in a second. Thank you all for coming in here. I've got so many comments to look through, but I'm looking forward to it, guys. I love the interaction. I was looking for 1 or 2 people to go and chat, and there's at least 5 of you, so I appreciate it a ton. So, we're talking about Joe Mixon first. Michael Pittman, I'll chalk it up as this. If The Colts want to win more games. They're 2-2-1 right now. They are going to have to, I repeat, they are going to have to run it through Jonathan Taylor. So when you go with a run-heavy offense, they're not using a guy in the run game like, Jamal Agnew was used. This is a very random example with Jacksonville last year. It's not like a Deebo Samuel situation. Michael Pittman's not going to run the ball for you. It's just not something that's going to happen. So let's switch over to here. So Pittman, I just think, is going to be kind of factored out. Yes, he's the number 1 wide receiver. I love Pittman. He is on my bench in some of my deeper leagues, and I will pull him for certain situations where, let's say, the Colts are going up against a vulnerable secondary that gives up plenty of yards per attempt and all that good stuff. Here's my thing with Mixon. This is the sacks list for the NFL in 2022. 1, 2, 3. Oh, there they are right there. The Cincinnati Bengals. 19 sacks given up so far. That's, I'm not going to swear on here because I want to just keep this friendly. That's horrible. That is absolutely horrible. 19 sacks, so that's about 4 sacks a game. They've settled down over the course of the last couple of weeks. The fact they protected Joe Burrow actually kept the Bengals in that game a lot longer than they probably should have been. And then, Justin Tucker, if you watch football, did what he does. So we're talking about your trade with, if you are joining right now, thank you so much. I'm currently on Joseph's question about trading Mixon and Pittman for Kamara. Filing through these pretty quickly, but I want to make sure I stay thorough for you guys. So Mixon, he's behind a horrible offensive line. And another thing, until last week, Joe Mixon wasn't exactly having a great year when you talk about just pure productivity. You love volume, right? A lot of people love volume. They want to make sure that their running back gets the ball plenty of times. Here's Joe Mixon, 96 attempts. Look at his yards per carry, folks. Look how much more he could be doing if he averaged what, this is pulling from another guy who's gone now. Rashad Penny is 6.1 yards per carry. He could double this. With 96 attempts, he should be in the 400s or 500s in today's day and age with the productivity that's expected out of running backs. And I'm not blaming him. I'm blaming the situation. I'm blaming the offensive line that's given up 19 sacks. So, Joseph, you gave up Pittman, a guy in an offense, a wide receiver in an offense that's going to be run heavy if they want to succeed. They understand that. That's how they did it with Phillip Rivers, right? The last time they made the playoffs, albeit they were a first-round exit. And then you got rid of Mixon. Mixon, a guy behind an offensive line. It's just not doing well. For Kamara. Kamara's healthy. If Kamara stays out of trouble, that's my big thing. There's off-the-field issues where he may see himself get suspended. But Alvin Kamara, one of those pass-catching backs, and that's what I talked about before, the CMCs, Alvin Kamara can have his name thrown in there. In standard PPR leagues, point per reception, this is the guy that, you really want to hone in on. Jameis Winston, although he's been more of a volume passer as of late, it's because Kamara has not been in there. Alvin Kamara, just in the small sample size that we have, 47 attempts for 203 yards, 4.3 yards per carry. Doesn't really jump off the page. But in very limited, very, very limited, there's a fly around me. I'm sorry, guys. Very limited repetitions, very limited just exposure to the game so far. 11 receptions for 110 yards. I mean, for you fantasy owners, that's an extra 22 points right there. I love the trade, Joseph. I think you did well. I think you got a two-way back with some upside. And we talk about running back by committees. I don't think the Saints really have one when Alvin Kamara is fully healthy. They might take their sweet time, putting him back into the offense, but I don't see that as an issue at all. Joe Mama Productions, just wondering, who do you support? I'm assuming you're talking about, hey, who's your favorite football team? I'm a Bears fan. So I'm watching that defense give up points that I've never seen them give up before, and I'm not talking about sheer amount. I'm just talking about giving up a touchdown when you absolutely cannot to the Minnesota Vikings after coming back from a 21-3 game. I have another podcast that is called Across Enemy Lines. Me and a Packer fan go at it. That happens every Thursday, and we live stream as well starting this week. So if you like that type of entertainment, this is more analytics. That one's more entertainment. So yeah, Joe Mama Productions. I'm a Bears fan, sadly. Joseph, what about trade Delvin Cook for Jonathan Taylor? I love that trade. You're talking about situations that are kind of revolving. Now, Delvin Cook, I just told you before, stick with him. There are a few exceptions that I'd be willing to make. Jonathan Taylor is one of them. And now would be a good time to try and strike this deal. If you don't strike it now, I'm not sure when you're going to, because his value is relatively low. Jonathan Taylor looks, dare I say it, human. Jonathan Taylor has 81 rushing attempts for 328 yards, 1 touchdown, 4.0 yards per carry. That's the part we've been looking at, and he's questionable right now, so he's fighting off injuries. You got an injured back who is not averaging nearly what he averaged last year. If we look at what he has done over the years, I mean, look, year 2 was his breakout year. 5.5 yards per carry. Even the year before that, he really he brought it to everybody. 5.0 yards per carry, 11 touchdowns. He's not scoring at nearly the rate he was. He's questionable right now. His yards per carry is down. Nonetheless, though, this team is sticking it out. He's played 4 games, and he has 81 rushing attempts. You do the math, folks. Along with the 9 receptions, Jonathan Taylor, despite his struggles, is still getting through with 20-plus touches a game. It's very, very evident that the Colts are not going to stray away from that. They just need to find different ways to get him involved, and when you're fighting injuries like Taylor has been, it's not a good deal. So I think Jonathan Taylor breaks out, and I think that he's getting even more volume than Delvin Cook, who's getting about 16 per game right now. So I think it's kind of a wash, Joseph. You could go good with either of those, but if you want to make that deal, I'm not going to sit here and call you dumb, because I think that is well thought out for sure. Iso, I very, very, very much apologize for taking a little bit to get here. Sorry, guys. Is Damian Pierce for Mike Williams a good trade? My running back 2 next to Chubb is Singletary or Damien Harris. Wide receivers are Kupp, DK, Amon-Ra, Mike Williams, and Pickens in a 10-man PPR. That's a phenomenal team, man. If it's your first time here on the channel, make sure you subscribe and like. As you're seeing, I'm going through every single comment. That is a phenomenal team. That team would kick my butt. I could pull up my team in a bit if you guys want. Damian Pierce for Mike Williams straight up. I'm not extremely big on Mike Williams because of the status of the team right now. Now, Justin Herbert's going to spread it around, but I seriously do like Damian Pierce for a multitude of reasons, and we'll look them up here. Hate to keep you guys waiting. I'll have more research loaded up next time, but as the questions come in, I kind of want to just make sure that I am answering everything thoroughly for all of you. Let's look here. I'll pull up his advanced stats later, but he is running a lot of routes. So I actually like Damian Pierce a lot more than Mike Williams. If you want to do this, I mean, it's completely up to you. I will tell you all right now, here's one thing. I'm going into broadcast journalism. I study sports a lot. When the whistle blows, when, 60 minutes start, and when all those guys go out on the field, no one can control what happens. I can do some in-depth research. I can base things off of certain contextual situations. Did a back go down as a new coach in who's more pass-heavy? Has somebody been getting more usage as of late? What's the injury situation around the player? How have they been capitalizing on their opportunities? And, what's the game script? I talked to Connell about this earlier. If a team's going to lose a game, you think they're, going to get crushed. I mean, we're talking Eagles versus current Raiders. The Raiders look horrible. My goodness, that's a separate conversation. I think they're going to throw the ball a lot more to get back in, vice versa. If you're up, I think you'll run it. So nonetheless, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Anything can happen, but I do base a lot of things off research. I do like Pierce a lot. I will just say that. So Damian Pierce, 4.8 yards per carry. Broke the 400-yard barrier already. He is a good receiving back. 13 receptions for 57 yards. He's not getting a whole lot of anywhere, but if you're in PPR, you like those 13 receptions through 5 games played. Davis Mills is thinking of him. That's always a good sign. I really think that he is getting a lot of production. The weird thing with Houston is even though they're not winning a whole lot of games, they don't care. So there's certain exceptions, right? They're sticking to the run. They understand that they want to develop one of the better talents on their team. I think Davis Mills could be a great guy for years to come once he gets more help. Right now, he just has Brandon Cooks and Damian Pierce. I think he's solving a running back void that we've seen over the course of the last few years. Did we really think David Johnson was going to be the answer a few years ago, right? In the D-Hop trade, that's a whole other can of worms. My buddy's a Texans fan, my old roommate. If he is opening this, I apologize to you, man. But I really think the sheer volume that Damian Pierce is getting will help him a lot. As for Mike Williams, here's one thing that I love to look at, and it seems so simple, right? But you want to be contextual with every bit of your analysis. You want to see who is available around this player. Mike Williams has been the wide receiver 1 over the course of the last couple weeks because Keenan Allen's been out. Who's in front of Pierce, right? If we look at the Texans, nobody. He's the feature back, and the Texans don't seem to care that they're losing because they can run the ball pretty well with Pierce. That 4.8 yards per carry is enough to convince them to go against the traditional game script of throwing at a ton. Hand it off, get a free 5 yards from him. Keenan Allen's on his way back. I think that takes a significant dip in Mike Williams' production. And Austin Eckler just put up 30-plus points a game in fantasy. Joshua Kelly's been doing great out of the backfield. Eckler's been catching him more. Eckler did everything last game. I think there's too much to like here. And, it's a big pie, but I don't think that Mike Williams is going to get a big enough piece. Joshua Palmer's second year is doing well. Gerald Everett has formed quickly into a top 10 tight end for the most part. Offensive line looks nice and healthy. It's always good, except for Rashawn Slater. It's always good to kind of look at the context of a team. And right here, I'm seeing a relatively healthy lineup that's getting more healthy. Joshua Palmer was questionable last week, and Keenan Allen might be back soon. I think you're going to get more out of Pierce, but again, I'm never going to tell you what to do. Phenomenal team, though, my man. Mark Andrews and Josh Allen, that's phenomenal. Yeah, you do have a lot of good running backs. I like Pierce more than Singletary, at least right now, because it's still a pass-heavy offense that's slowly starting to get more balanced. But, hey, you do you. Trying to stack up in every position. I hear you, man. Bailey, I appreciate the support. All right, we really need to get this man famous. I appreciate you. Joseph, if you ever need a co-host, hit me up. Would love to talk fantasy football too. We could set that up, guys. If you want to come on here, I can get a dual camera set up. I use Discord. We cut the photos out, and we make it look really nice. If you look at my podcast, Across Enemy Lines, that I post on once a week, this isn't really me plugging. It's just an example. That's kind of how we do it. We'll cut out 2 faces from Discord. We put it on a football background. I use graphics like the ones you saw earlier, and we really have a lot of fun. So, Joseph, now with Pittman off my team, my only wide receivers are CD, Cooks, Chris Olave, and Romeo Doubs. What wide receiver should I pick up on waivers to have wide receiver depth? Might I ask you from earlier, Joseph, is this guy available? I mean, he's good. He's a good short-term solution. I'm not going to say hold on to him through the whole season, but you've got a high-flying offense in Detroit that I really think is using a lot of wide receivers to a great extent. So I would go with a guy like Josh Reynolds. Let's go in my waiver wire real quick for my team. I've got a 10-team PPR that I could pull up, and we can kind of go through some low percentage guys that I really like in terms of ownership. Again, guys, if you could leave a like on this stream, I really appreciate it. I appreciate all of you commenting. This is making for a really interactive experience, making me super happy, and I'm definitely going to try and make a routine of doing this at least once a week. We'll try and go for as much as possible. Otherwise, I've got those informative shorts. Really up to you guys if you have any suggestions on what you'd like to see in the future, too. Just opening up my team here so we can go on waivers. And I have a start 2, sit 1 series. I do that. Oh, this team's 2-3. Great. My other 2 teams are 4-1. That's all right. Start 2, sit 1 series that I use on my shorts here on this channel, and that really kind of highlights the guys that I believe should go in. It's super broad, so that's kind of why I'm doing this waivers thing too. Not telling you to start these people, but I'm just giving you a greater extent of what I like and why I like it in terms of availability. Just going into wide receivers in my league here, we'll switch over to let you see what I could see. You've got Doubs. I love Doubs. Gallup is probably owned in a decent amount of leagues. He's not. 50-50. Check out Gallup. Check out Michael Gallup. He had that contested catch before. Look, he is just coming into this offense, but it seems like Cooper Rush, who, that's a whole nother debate, seemed to like him relatively well. Used him a little bit, and when somebody capitalizes on their targets, I go back to Josh Reynolds. He had 3 targets, hauled in all 3 of them, had a touchdown week 2. He's had at least 6 targets every week ever since. So I think that we're going to see some more high uses from Michael Gallup. Obviously, no more Amari Cooper. So it's really CD and Gallup right now. I'm not the biggest fan of having 2 wide receivers from the same team. You know what, Joseph? If Chicago, if this is going to sound super biased, if they start picking up their passing game, maybe look at Mooney, but he's definitely not a start right now. He's not getting the sheer volume that he should be getting. Zay Jones, this is one that interests me a lot, okay? I know it doesn't look too attractive right now. Just 22 receptions for 185 yards. While I cut to this, I'll switch back to me. And 1 touchdown. Here's my thing with Zay Jones. And here's my thing with the Jacksonville Jaguars offense in general. what did I just talk about with game scripts, right, guys? You wanna pay attention to game scripts. If you think somebody's gonna lose, I still think the Jaguars are gonna lose a decent amount of games this year. They got off to a really hot start. That defense needs some work, though. The offense in general is what I really like. Who's the number one wide receiver? It's Christian Kirk, right? We talk about the Cincinnati Bengals and how we can make Tyler Boyd, we can make Jamar Chase, we can make T. Higgins work. I'm going to show you guys something. Appreciate the patience. I'm trying to pull things up as fast as I can here. There's going to be some bumps in the road first couple of streams. I will admit that for first and foremost, but do appreciate all of you coming here. Okay, here's the Bengals. I'm making a comparison between the Bengals wide receiving core and the Jaguars. You'll see it in a second. Jamar Chase, 53 targets. Hayden Hurst, we talked about him. Yeah, I talked about how that's a crowded wide receiving room. There's a tight end you could definitely pick up. He was on there earlier. T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd, both over 23, and then there's a huge drop-off before you hit the Mike Thomas, the Mitchell Wilcox, so on and so forth. This is supposed to be a 1-2-3 punch. 1A, 1B, 1C. One day Tyler Boyd comes off. One day Higgins goes off. One day Chase goes off. Okay? Everyone, and I mean everyone, talks about how that is the 1A, 1B, 1C example. Look at this. Christian Kirk, 39 targets. Zay Jones, 32 targets. Marvin Jones, 30 targets. Evan Ingram, 26 targets. Notice how all of these guys are getting a decent amount. Now, Zay Jones, week 3 might have scared you off. But look what he came back and did. He got 8 targets. He earned them back. His catch rate, he is capitalizing on his targets more than the guy above him in Christian Kirk. And that's why Kirk has started to see a little bit of a decrease in production. Just 3 targets that last game to Zay Jones' 8. That's Trevor Lawrence looking at the tape. That's Trevor Lawrence realizing, hey, this guy's catching the ball a little bit more often in Zay Jones than Christian Kirk. I'm going to start paying a little more attention to him. The sheer stats right now still say that Christian Kirk's the overpowering wide receiver, but Zay Jones is in a 1A, 1B, 1C wide receiving core. So, Joseph, this is back to your question. I think check out Zay Jones, check out Michael Gallup. Look at Darnell Mooney. I wouldn't pick him up quite yet. All right, Joe Mama Productions. I'm a Packers fan. Great. We'll get along. I promise we'll get along. I tolerate a Packers fan on my other podcast. We will do good. My QB owns you. He does. He's got a pretty hefty record. It's 20-something, and we've won under 10 games. So all good. Appreciate you, Ezo. What channel does the Behind Enemy Lines podcast? Yeah, it's called Across Enemy Lines. Look that up on YouTube. I can put it in the description in a bit as well. I'll do that for you guys right now. Appreciate you asking. Yeah, this is more for entertainment. So this podcast is more for analytics. I'm trying to help all of you on your fantasy journey as a fellow fantasy owner myself. But excuse me, guys. And I do shorts on this channel as well, so I appreciate you all asking about that. I will get to the rest of your comments, I promise. Just put it in the chat, guys. That is Cross Enemy Lines. That's more for entertainment. So that's me and a Packer fan going at it. We do random polls each week from fans, and we ask people questions like, is a hot dog a sandwich? I mean, we're very random on there, to say the very least. That's kind of what we do on that, in that regard, right? So, yeah, if you like that, thank you. I appreciate it very much. That's where we are there. Should I trade Henry, Debo, DK, and Goddard for Kupp, Lamb, James Conner, and Pitts, half PPR? Those are always interesting, Michael. Thank you for your patience on getting to this question. Okay, so Derrick Henry, it's half-point PPR. I like him a little more than I would traditional PPR. Henry is not a pass-catching back, but there's no running back by committee, right? So Derrick Henry is getting as many, and I mean as many possible touches as he possibly can. Why else? Because A.J. Brown's gone, so the best option is Robert Woods. So here's your situation with Henry right now. There's a lot of appeal there. First in the league, 104 attempts, 3.9 yards per carry. Don't really care because he's going to get sheer volume. The Tennessee Titans plan right now is quite simple, same as the Bears. Run the ball. Ryan Tannehill hasn't shown that he can do a whole lot without a top 10 wide receiver, as most quarterbacks would not. You're going to see a drop-off in production. Let's break this down. Henry, Debo. I love Debo, the wide back, as he's called. Wide receiver and running back. DK Metcalf. You've got Geno slinging it. And Dallas Goedert. for Cooper Kupp. So we're talking about a top 2, not 2 wide receiver at the moment. You know, Devontae Adams was up there. CeeDee Lamb, James Conner, and Kyle Pitts. So let's just wash them together, okay? Derrick Henry and James Conner. I like Derrick Henry a little bit more because of the sheer volume. Deebo Samuel for CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to call that a wash because although Deebo does run the ball a little bit, he has not been getting the ball as much as of late. Jimmy Garoppolo, spreads the ball around a little bit, and then even when Trey Lance comes back, which is not going to be this year, so this isn't relevant, he took a liking to Brandon Ayuk, so we'll see how they try and develop him. So Henry over Conner. I'm going to call Deebo and Lamb a wash. Lamb, although he doesn't run the ball, he is the feature and, undebatable number 1 wide receiver over there in Dallas. Man. I'm really thinking here for you. Henry over Conner. Deebo and Lamb are a wash. So right now I would say you're giving up a little more. Goddard. I'm just trying to think of how to pair these up. 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1, 2, 3, 4. I would take Goddard over Pitts any day of the week. I mean, you have a guy, and I'm not even talking too much about that it's on Pitts. He does not get usage at all. And Marcus Mariota doesn't seem to take a real liking to Kyle Pitts. He loves the rookie in Drake London, who's a big target himself, and he was supposed to be the consensus. Excuse me, folks. Number 1 pick, or number 1 wide receiver on that team. So I really think that Dallas Goedert is far, far, far better than Kyle Pitts if we look at the target share for the Atlanta Falcons. There's other things you guys can look at that I'll look at for you in the future in terms of routes run, how many snaps are these guys getting, all that good stuff. I mean, here's your number 4 overall pick. 1, he's hurt. And 2, he's not getting remotely close to the targets that Drake London is. And in one of the games that he played, he got no targets. That's not good. That is not good. Catch rate's 45%. So even when he is getting the ball, some of these are errant throws by Marcus Mariota. I don't love it. If I'm being honest, Michael, like I said before, I'm never going to tell you exactly what to do with your team. But I definitely like Derrick Henry more than James Conner. I think Deebo and Lamb are a wash. I think Goddard is way better than Pitts. If we're talking about DK and Kupp, obviously Kupp is way, way better. I don't mind you going after Kupp. I don't mind you taking maybe somebody off the waiver wire like, a Josh Reynolds or a Zay Jones and pairing them up with someone like Deebo and then trying to get Kupp. I just don't like the swap outs with Goddard. With Goddard. I'm pronouncing that wrong. I'm sorry, guys. I'm tired. And Pitts. And then I really don't like the drop off from Henry to an injury-prone James Conner so far. Deebo to Lamb's a wash. If it's me, I'm not doing it, but that's just what I'm saying. You don't have to listen to me at all. I could start DK, Kupp, and Amon-Ra. I just hate my second running backs. Plus, I have Higby on the bench to throw in flex. Thoughts on Kenneth Walker starting over Naji this week in my other league. Naji Harris, it's weird. He's not very productive as he wasn't last year when you're talking about a yards per carry standpoint. But Naji Harris gets volume, and right now we're in the middle of, a changing of the guards at quarterback, I guess we'll call it. We went from Mitch Trubisky, now we're over to Mr. Pickett, Kenny Pickett. And even so, Naji Harris is getting sheer volume at the moment. Let's look at who he plays in the future. I'm going to go to the Steelers' schedule. We had 11 rushes for 20 attempts, or 11 attempts for 20 yards against the Buffalo Bills, but that is the Bills, so we'll cut them a little slack. So looking at run defenses at the moment. Bye coming up. We go Miami. Miami gives up a crap ton of yards, both on the ground and through the air. Then we go Philadelphia. Philadelphia is pretty locked down, but they have a better secondary than they do a front seven. And this is all context, guys. I just like to look at who this person is going to play. If this is more of a long-term investment, which I think Kenneth Walker III, who's going to be the feature back in Seattle, versus Naji Harris, who's the guy in Pittsburgh right now is. I'm going to take some time to really look at this for you. Kenneth Walker, though. So, okay, I'd say easy. Relatively easy in Miami. Philadelphia is going to be tough. New Orleans is going to be tough. Cincinnati, and other than Trey Hendrickson, I'm not too scared of them. The interior is not too strong. Front seven of Indianapolis is pretty solid. Atlanta, Baltimore, Carolina, Las Vegas. That's a relatively easy remaining schedule for Naji Harris. Oh, you just said this week. I'm sorry. We'll go back here. Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker's going up against Arizona. So I see what you're saying now. Here, while I look this up, I'm going to keep going down the comments super quick. You guys are doing phenomenal. I really appreciate everything in here. And if you guys want to, talk to each other and ask each other advice too, by all means. This is more of an open seminar than anything else, and I'm just kind of showing the research that I employ when I'm looking at players. So Walker goes up against Arizona. I don't hate it. Arizona, they are only allowing 97.4 yards per game. That's pretty low. But when you think about, Walker being the guy, Walker being the one that they're going to go with, as I look up one more thing. Just make sure I get you an honest answer here before I say anything. Yeah, so we've also got 3.97 yards per carry allowed by Arizona. That's pretty stout. We'll see what happens with an increased, increased amount of production with an increased amount of reps with Kenneth Walker III. I honestly think with how well Geno's been throwing it, I really don't hate the move. I think that it's going to open up a lot of room for the run. And right now, the Cardinals do not look like a very good football team. I know they kind of challenged the Eagles, but before that, they've really had some offensive woes. This is the last week without D-Hop, so that's going to change a lot in the wide receiver market for sure. So, yeah, I think Kenneth Walker is going to be fine this week. I think he'll get a few receptions, and the guy's averaging 6.3 yards per carry in limited action, but he was great at Michigan State. I think this is a good tester week. If you don't want to use him, fine, but I'd honestly go either way on that one, man. Check out the other running backs on your team, too. If there's anybody on waivers, you can drop those in the comments, and we can kind of go through those. I am not huge on that against the Arizona Cardinals, but they're a bend-don't-break defense, and we saw them somewhat get broken by Miles Sanders. He didn't have a great week last week, so I'm a little indifferent on that one. Joseph Myers, Boyd, Judy, Ayuk, and Pickens are available. I like Boyd at the moment if he can stay healthy. I think he's going to get a decent amount of catches. It's just one of those revolving doors when you talk about the wide receiving core. I don't hate it, though. I think that it's okay for sure. Judy's a good one if he can stay healthy. My big thing with Jerry Jeudy, but if you're picking someone off waivers, talking about Izo's comment right now. If you're talking about waivers, you can always get rid of him and go for somebody else. Judy's on there. I like him a lot. I would love Brandon Ayuk if Trey Lance was playing. He loved to use him a ton. Pickens has some upside, but he's not getting the most usage right now. We know it's the Naji machine over there. Joseph, I'm 0-5, and I have the number one waiver ad. So now I'm picking up Walker. I love the Walker pick for long-term, longevity in general. I think that he's really going to have some good production, especially with how well Geno's been doing in the passing game. See if he can go out and run some more routes going forward as well. I also have Breece Hall, who just snapped. Good for you. Brian Robinson, who should be getting some more action, and Delvin Cook on my roster. Never been so excited. That's good to hear. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to fill those lineups with viable options, with things that make sense going forward. All right, I'll check that out later. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a fun podcast that we do for sure. I'm going to head out. Well, thanks for joining. I have both. Just wondering who to start right now this week for matchups. Okay, I gotcha. Let's take a look. Dylan's in the chat. Appreciate you joining in here. We are just firing questions right now. If you go earlier in the video, I went through my waiver targets. So we are going between Mr. Naji Harris and Kenneth Walker. I'm going to go back into ESPN Fantasy. If you use another, I've used Sleeper before too. If you guys want to let me know which fantasy football platforms you use. I've tried Sleeper. I've tried NFL. I did Yahoo forever ago. I'm not big on Yahoo. I mean, it's all just aesthetic, right? They all work the same when it comes to scoring format. Just taking a look at the facts here, trying to see who we would start. Yeah, I messed that up earlier. I had a feeling he was still playing someone. They don't have a bye week yet. Okay, so we've got Naji Harris taking on Tampa Bay. No bye week until week 9, so that's right at the halfway point of the season. And then Kenneth Walker going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Okay. I'm going to look at two things here, because running the ball takes a crap load of time when you compare to passing. Once that ball hits the ground, this time pretty much just, it stops. You know how that works. So I'm going to look at a couple things here for you guys. Appreciate you commenting. Keep those comments going. Make sure you like while you're watching here. I absolutely love the support. Here to kind of open it up. And I'm learning more about the game as well. I'm looking more at, target share. I'm looking at routes run. I'm looking at snaps taken. Those are things that matter to me a lot as a football fan. Okay. Got that. I'm going to make a little pros and cons list for you here, and we'll kind of break through it together. This is close, though. I mean, they're both going up against decently stout defenses. You've got Naji Harris going up against the Arizona Cardinals defense, and you know how I feel about him already if you've watched this video for a bit. He relies more on sheer volume. Kenneth Walker is kind of an untold story, but I think he'll be more of a sheer production guy, along with volume. He's gotten a decent amount of volume even as the second back before Rashad Penny went down. This last thing we'll do here, and I think I'm going to know the answer, but I just want to see in general. All right, one moment, folks. Just looking here. I'm cross-referencing a few different bits of information, and then I will run them by all of you. Favorite football teams, if you want to drop those in the chat while I'm looking things up here. Hope you're all doing very well. 27. Okay. I think we got our answer here. Sorry, folks. Give me 10 more seconds. All right, it's nearly a wash, but here's what I have for you. Let me zoom in. Okay, just so I can see a little more. So I have the Bucks going up against Naji Harris, and the Cards going up against Kenneth Walker. So, yeah, I'll just leave it there so I can read it to you guys. Bucks allow 4.4 yards per carry so far. They're a little bit lower in that department when it comes to allowing fantasy points to running backs. And they have the ball for less time. They have the ball for 28 minutes of time of possession. The reason I bring that up is because when you run the ball, a lot of time gets sucked up. Cardinals, 3.97 yards per carry, so that is stronger than the Bucs. Keep in mind the Cardinals going up against Kenneth Walker, 31 minutes of time of possession. We know that Naji Harris is going to get volume. We know that Kenneth Walker can be productive and has some upside for sure, but we haven't seen that sheer volume quite yet because, he just hasn't been the number one back, so we're not too sure. Personally, and this could go either way, I think it's so close. I would lean Naji. The Bucs are giving up a little bit more yards per carry. Naji's going to get that volume. We're not too sure. If Kenneth Walker has a couple of bad rushes, that they start cycling through the running back depth chart. Right now, just for their experimental week, I would feel like Naji has a lower floor. He's going to get his 15 to 20. The Bucs give up a little bit more, and their time of possession is lower. Yeah. The Bucs are 28th in time of possession at just a shade under 28 minutes a game. I like Naji a little bit more, even though I know he just relies on sheer volume. I'm going to take a couple more questions. I'm going to hop off, guys, but you can leave more questions in the comments, and I'll just respond by typing once the stream is done. So Izzo, I'm sorry, that is a very long answer. I like Naji a little more. I think he has a higher floor, or higher basement. Ceiling is about the same right now, just because there's so many unknowns with Kenneth Walker. But I loved what I saw at Michigan State. Obviously, NFL is a completely different ball. We're going to go with Naji, I would say, but it is entirely up to you. Dylan, thanks for joining. You trading Debo for A.J. Brown. Brown has a better QB and schedule. Debo has a higher floor. Full PPR league. Okay. Yeah, I appreciate the context in the full PPR. We know for a fact that Brown is the number one target, and we know that Jalen Hurts likes to throw it a decent amount. He only has 4 passing touchdowns to 6 rushing touchdowns. Only knock on Brown right now might be in the future. Is he going to get... Yeah. Is he going to get those touchdowns? With Brown having a better QB and an easier schedule, I mean, look, I don't think the quarterback argument with Debo is huge, only because there are at least 6, 7, 8 sometimes coordinated plays where Debo's getting the ball handed off, and at that point, Jimmy G's quarterback play, all he has to do is manage, and when you're a running back, that doesn't really impact you a whole lot. Whereas Brown has a better QB and schedule. Oh, you're trading for Debo or AJ Brown, Dylan. I like either of those, to be honest with you. I think it's a wash, full PPR league. Brown's going to get more of those bigger receptions. I'm looking at it right now. He's got 45 targets so far. 28 receptions, just a 62% catch rate. That could be up a little higher, but he's got 436 receiving yards. And then Debo, right? Debo does a little bit of everything. And he's in a run-heavy offense. And obviously, when you're a part of that running game, it helps you a little bit. Just thinking on this one for you, Dylan. If I had to give a small edge, I mean, you're right. You're talking about higher floor. I think I would go with Debo because he's got 21 rushing attempts through 5 games. Do the math. That's about 4-ish, okay? And then he's got 20 receptions and 37 targets. I think he starts to get a little bit more. Jimmy G leans a little more on Debo than, Trey Lance did. So that's kind of skewing the data in the first game and some change. Or not even game and some change. Yeah, game and some change because Trey Lance played that entire monsoon game against the Bears, which I got to watch. I'm going to go Debo because of that higher floor. I think there's some more safety there, but you can honestly go good with either of those guys. Hurts is the better QB, right? But that running game is more implemented in him than it is in, A.J. Brown, whereas the running game, that little extra piece, over in San Francisco, it's guaranteed to go over to Debo because he's had so much success. We're talking 6.6 yards per carry for Debo Samuel in his 4-year career. I like Debo with the higher floor. Yeah. I like Debo with the higher floor. I think you'll get some more consistency. I'm a more conservative player when it comes to fantasy, so we'll go with that. It's a 12-man, so not many options. Okay. I have Stevenson as my guaranteed start this week. Stevenson, oh my goodness. Stevenson really took, I love Damian Harris. He had 15 touchdowns in 2021. And I really thought he was going to capitalize last game against a Lions defense that is horrible. I mean, it was allowing more points than almost anybody at that point and giving up 29 more points to a third-string quarterback, which, by the way, I like Bailey Zappi a lot. Not so much from a fantasy standpoint yet, just because of the way that offense is built, but who knows? Maybe it's his job. I mean, I know Mac Jones was a first rounder, but never say never. Yeah, so Ramondre Stevenson. Yeah, he's got to be a guaranteed start. I think that he's going to get that sheer volume, that 15 to 20 touches that the Patriots tend to deal out. And Ramondre, I mean, even before Damian Harris went down, Ramondre Stevenson was getting a very, very hefty amount of carries. I mean, you're going to tell me I'm getting this from a second running back? That's tied for 17th in the league. He's beating half of the starters in the league in usage. That's something. So 5.5 yards per carry. He's going to get some more action coming up pretty soon. Yeah, I love him. I think Ramondre Stevenson, 25 attempts for 161 yards, 6.4 yards per carry. Yeah, nothing but ups for Stevenson for sure. So great call there for sure. Niners, yeah. All right, Izo, I appreciate you. It was great watching your stream. You earned a sub. I appreciate you, man. I'm going to do as much in-depth research as I possibly can. There's some great streamers out there. I'm not saying I'm the best quite yet, but I'm doing a lot of research in terms of target share and all of that good stuff. So we'll go with that. Target share, routes run, snaps, and I'm trying to get more analytical than that. Depth down the field when it comes to average target and all that good stuff. Who's getting those deep passes for sure. So I'm going to take a couple more, and then we'll get out of here. Do appreciate you, Izo. Eli Vaughn, thank you for stopping in on the stream. I need some help. I'm 0-5, and my whole team is mid-players except for I have Cooper Kupp. Here's what you do, Eli. Cooper Kupp's a juggernaut, right? He's going to get that guaranteed 10 targets in the game, even though Matt Stafford's been sucking air as of late. You have to trade away Cooper Kupp for some depth. I know you don't want to do it, but look where you are right now. You're getting great production out of Kupp. I'm sure it's fun to see him get up into 25, 30-point range nearly every week. Go get a package for him. Go get a consistent wide receiver, and I can tell you some guys I'd go after right now. We'll go into fantasy. Is this PPR, Eli? I'm going to take Eli, I'm going to take Joseph, and then I'm going to take T-Ron, and I'm going to call it a day on the stream, guys. So Joseph will be the last one, but leave comments afterwards. Please don't stop. I will answer them as soon as this is done. So Eli, it's PPR. One of the big gaps, and I've seen this Fantasy Flock. I'll give a shout out to him. Probably doesn't even know me, right? If you watch him, he's got over 100,000 subs. He's great. He talks about getting a great quarterback and a great tight end. I think you can get a lot of mid-tier wide receivers between that wide receiver 11 to wide receiver 30 range, and there's not going to be a whole lot of difference when it comes to the not only the skill level, but the fantasy production. Cooper Kupp, as amazing as he is going to get 5 to 6 more points than, a Christian Kirk or something this year. On average, if everything sketches out to the way it looks like it's going to be. Him and Deebo Samuel were actually a lot closer than most think last year because of Deebo's ability in the running game. Sell Cooper Kupp for a package. Who could you get for him? I want you to try and go out and get a very good tight end. A Dallas Goedert. A Tyler Higby. Tyler Higby has actually been the second option on the Rams this year. Everyone said, it's going to be Allen Robinson after that down year in Chicago. Guess what, guys? It's not Allen Robinson. It's Tyler Higby by a freaking country mile. I like Tyler Higby a lot. Try and get him. You're looking at 9, 4, 14, and 10 targets in the previous 4 games. The catch percentage is up there too. We saw some 60s and 50s when we were looking at the lower tier teams. 69%, nice catch rate. This is with no touchdowns, and Tyler Higby's been a top 10 tight end, getting in that top 5 range. I mean, we're not talking about joining the likes of Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce quite yet, but we are up there. Go get a consistent wide receiver, and go get Dallas Goedert. That is probably my best answer for you. Go get someone who's done it all. I mean, we're talking consistency. Here's a possible trade package, and it's going to be completely up to those people, right? Here's my thing with trades. A lot of you have been telling me, no one wants to make trades with me. This was before this stream even. Don't go in. These are Mike Evans stats. Don't go into the trade saying, hey, I need this. What do I need to fork over to get what I want? Go into trades saying, let's say someone has Mike Evans and you want him. What positions are you trying to improve? And I'm willing to make a deal. Make it about them. They're not going to want to respond to someone who's saying, hey, I need something from you. What do I have to fork over and over in order to get what I want? Go in there with a mutually beneficial perspective, paint that picture for them, and go from there. All right. So, Eli, we're going to go for a package deal here. I like a Tyler Higby. I like a Dallas Goedert. And I want you to try and get, because he is somewhat low value coming off last week, even though 5 receptions for 64 yards and a touchdown last week he just had a couple of big catches. 4 receptions for 81 yards. He got bailed out by a 40-yard catch. We're talking about a guy who gets 1,000 yards every year. He's going to get you 60, 70, 80 yards in a PPR. You're going to get 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 receptions. That's going to get you 12 to 14 points. I'm talking ballpark here. So what I want you to do is maybe go after Mr. Consistent and Mike Evans. Chris Godwin's had some health issues. Then go after a Tyler Higby, or go after good old reliable Mike Evans. Okay. Joseph. We think about Everett and Brandon Cooks. All right. Mr. Joseph. Appreciate all of you guys stopping in. Make sure you like the stream if you like what you're seeing so far. This was waivers, so I gave you all 6 waivers if you go to the beginning of the video. Waiver wire targets who are owned by a low percentage of fantasy football teams in ESPN. Mostly PPR leagues, but it actually applies to all of them. And that's what I did there. So I gave you Gino Smith. I gave you Kenneth Walker III. I gave you Josh Reynolds. Gave you Hayden Hurst. Gave you Mike Boone. And I gave you the Rams defense. Those were my big targets this week. So right now we're taking Joseph's question. Everett and Brandon Cooks. All right. And ROS, for those of you who are wondering, it's rest of season. Everett, I'll make the same argument I did before, Joseph. We've got Keenan Allen coming back, so you're talking about Keenan Allen. You're talking about Mr. Mike Williams, who I'm a little low on. Someone asked about Damian Pierce and Mike Williams, and I actually took Pierce. It's up to you guys, but I think he gets more usage in a team that's just trying to highlight their best player. Everett is in a wide receiver room. It's going to feature Keenan Allen when healthy, Mike Williams, Joshua Palmer, second-year guy who I'm a big fan of and I think is going to get a lot of action. Everett's been doing well. And we talk about the value of a tight end. Maybe you can go shopping between Everett and somebody else on the waiver wire. As with Brandon Cooks, Cooks has had some up and down, definitely some up and down targets. Now, my rule of thumb with bad teams is I love the number 1 wide receiver because I think they're going to get a lot of usage. They are always, always, always trying to, claw their way back in games. Cooks, it's never been an issue of, him being on the field. But this year, I remember him having at least one down week, even though he still is the guy. Cooks is getting poached right now. So he's got targets by a mile. 42 targets. More snaps than anybody. I love to look at snaps too. Who's on the field? Obviously the wide receiver one's going to be on for, even condensed single back packages where it's very clear you're going to run. He's going to be the guy out there blocking because you want your biggest threat in a wide receiver out there just to try and trick out a defense to say, hey, if I do pass it, you're going to get cooked by my best guy. You're not going to put your wide receiver 4 out there, rest your 1. It's going to be very apparent that you're running the ball. Catch rate's kind of low. 1 touchdown. Look at O.J. Howard's got 2. Jordan Akins got 1. Excuse me. And Davis Mills isn't throwing for a whole lot of touchdowns because the Texans are bad. So I'm not too big on either of those. I think they're both kind of a wash. I think Justin Herbert is a way better quarterback than Davis Mills, and the Chargers are in a way better circumstance. Yes, they win a lot, but they are just such a throw-heavy offense. Herbert's chucking the ball left and right. So Joseph, it's kind of a wash for both of those. I think Everett's value goes down just a tad because of the addition of Keenan Allen, but I think he'll still get a few receptions a week. And then when you look at Brandon Cooks, he's the number 1 guy in a bad team, but when you've got touchdown poachers like O.J. Howard, it's not the most fun scenario. Just taking a look really quick at Everett because I'm kind of curious. In the one game that Keenan Allen played, He got 2 targets. 1 reception for 2 yards, 3 targets. Looking at Everett right now. I think Everett's value is going to tank a little bit, and Cook's is going to kind of stay stagnant. Both are kind of in the same range to me. I think you can get better tight ends than Everett, even though he looks good right now. If you have Everett, his value is high right now. I would trade him before the situation gets a little worse. Try and go out and get yourself maybe a mid-tier wide receiver 1, low-tier wide receiver, low 1, high 2. You're not going to get too much for a guy like Everett, but his value is high right now. Look at the week he's coming off of. Excuse me, I read that backwards. So he got a decent amount when Allen did play. But I do think once he's healthy and they get into the full swing of things, because Allen didn't get a whole lot of action in his first week, that's kind of where things will go there. And that's just me using the logic that I'm thinking of when you have a number 1 wide receiver come back in. They're going to get a decent chunk of the pie. Yeah, so there you go, Eli. There you go, Joseph. All right, C-Ron. Should I trade J-Rob for Kirk or London? My running backs are Jonathan Taylor, DeAndre Swift, Damian Pierce, Travis Etienne, and Rashad White. Wide receivers are Hollywood Brown, Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, Tyler Boyd, Adam Thielen, and Jameson Williams. Full PPR. For Kirk or London. Marcus Mariota is bad. I'm going to put that there right now. There's a lot of stats out there proving it. I mean, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions is nothing crazy. It's also not the worst. But when you look at the fact, he's ignoring a tight end that could really open up this offense, I think it brings an interesting aspect into things. There's London getting, I mean, we pulled this up before. Kyle Pitts is being straight up ignored. Considering everything. London's hurt right now. Kirk's in that 1A, 1B, 1C scenario, and even though Mariota's bad, I think that London's going to get a little more attention. But Kirk and London are actually tied right now. But just because London gets more attention, that doesn't mean he's going to get, the most catches. His catch rate is 56%. It's no fault of his own. It's because Marcus Mariota just doesn't throw good football sometimes. You look at Christian Kirk's situation with Trevor Lawrence, where he spreads the ball out a lot more. Kirk had a really good start to the season. I think he's going to have more ups. So it's up to you and what you want, C-Ron. I will tell you this. London will have a higher floor. He's going to get more volume. Kirk will have a higher ceiling. So if you want a guy who's going to explode a little more, I think Kirk will have more of those explosive performances. Drake London with Marcus Mariota at quarterback is not going to get a whole lot of things done. Other than, his usual like 5, 6, 7 catches on around 9 or 10 targets, which is pretty nice. But for that I would go, Kirk's got a higher ceiling, London's got a lower floor. You have a great team. I love the fact you have Jonathan Taylor, who I think is going to see an uptick in production. DeAndre Swift, Damian Pierce. I mean, that's good right there. Then you've got Travis Etienne out of the passing game, Rashad White. Hollywood Brown, I think, is still going to be a great option. Everyone talks about DeAndre Hopkins taking his value away. He's going to take away the number 1 corner on the other team. And Kyler's going to spread the ball out. I mean, that's never been an issue. Look what he's doing with Zach Ertz right now. He's that too. I really think it's just a rung on the ladder. D-Hop goes up. Brown down to 2, Ertz down to 3. I think that's really what we're going to see. Rondo Moore will still get his here and there. He has his PPR. Thank you, Anime. Give such good advice. You really know what you're talking about. Mad respect. I appreciate all of the support. Should I look to sell high on Olave? If so, this will be my last one. Panboo. So then Eli and A, I am going to respond to yours in the comments. All right. So I'm going to end the stream after Panboo here. This is the last one, and then I'm going to respond to the rest of you in the comments. All right. Panboo, should I look to sell high on Chris Olave? If so, who should I get in a 1-for-1 trade? My other receivers are Justin Jefferson. Cortland Sutton is having an underrated year. For how garbage that Broncos offense is, Cortland Sutton is top 5 in receiving right now. So just think about how well he is doing. Cortland Sutton's had like nobody throwing him the ball for the last few years. And now he gets a guy like Russell Wilson, who, even though he's underperforming, is doing well. Devontae Smith, I'm assuming, judging by the spelling, and Romeo Doubs. Doubs is the guy. I will say that right now. Doubs is the guy in Green Bay. He's getting more targets. Dobbs is a better route runner, I believe, than Allen Lazard. He's got better hands, and he's a big body. He's going to go in there and make some contested catches. I saw a really impressive catch in preseason, and Dobbs is taking over right now. I mean, he's got the higher amount of targets, even though in the depth chart right now it says it's Allen Lazard. And look at the catch rate. Aaron Rodgers doesn't throw a whole lot of bad balls. Catch rate 76%. Lazard's just etching him out with a touchdown. Same exact amount of snaps. I mean, Lazard's got one more. Should I look to sell high on Olave? Pambu, I look at Olave as more of a long-term investment. I really do. I think that Jameis Winston likes him a lot, and even with the return of Michael Thomas, Chris Olave, he's had his touchdowns now. He's had his target share. He's got really nice hands. He's good at making plays in the open field, and even in press coverage, he's had some pretty impressive matchups against tough secondaries, and he's done well. I have Olave on my bench in a couple of leagues right now. I actually started him. I started in week 5 and week 4. I mean, when you look at a long-term investment, Panbu. Thank you for commenting, by the way. We're going bottom to top. I made the mistake before. I just got to read context more. Got his chances early, 3 for 3. Guys like Jameis Winston are going to take notice. And then we actually went to Andy Dalton for a little bit. Gets 13 targets, doesn't capitalize on a whole lot. Goes 9 for 13 with 147. Monster game. He's had touchdowns ever since. I see consistent production here. I really do. His worst fantasy week, if you're talking PPR here, 3 receptions for 41 yards, no fault of his own, wasn't getting nearly as many snaps, got 3 targets, took advantage of all of them, and still got 7.1 points. Ever since then, it's been double-digit city. I really just like Olave. I mean, you can trade him if you want. You'll get a decent amount. But Olave, Jefferson, and Sutton, that's a killer 1-2-3 punch. And you've got Devontae Smith as a 4, and then Dobbs as a... That's a great team. I just like Olave the way he is. If you want to try and fill out another position, because I see your wide receiving core is crazy right now, you go right ahead. He's high value. Alrighty. I love you guys so much for coming in here. I'm gonna speed through the rest of these, okay? And then I'm gonna go. So after A, it's seriously done. So Eli, my friend offered me a trade. I get Tyler Higby and Jared Goff. He gets George Kittle and Geno Smith. I am the dude of question you answered about me being 0-5 with Cooper Kupp. Should I accept? I'd use Kupp to your advantage and try and get... I'm not big on George Kittle. He hasn't been getting used a whole lot by Jimmy Garoppolo. He's a good blocking tight end. He's one of the best tight ends in the league. I will still stand by that. But he's more that blocking guy, whereas, Travis Kelce, Mr. 4 receptions for 20-something yards and 4 touchdowns. That's a way different story. George Kittle and Geno Smith. Tyler Higby and Jared Goff. Let's look at this straight up, right? Most people are going to call me crazy. I like Tyler Higby a lot more than George Kittle, given that scenario right now. The Rams throw the ball more than the 49ers, a team that runs the ball almost more than anybody else in the league. And I'll actually come and prove that here. Thank you all for joining, seriously. Just finishing up questions, I will answer the rest. Here's why I like Higby a lot more than George Kittle. 69% of the time, that's the highest rate in the league. That is passing play percentage for the Rams. They pass the ball more than anybody else in the league when you're talking about frequency. Where do we find the 49ers? 6th last. They are a 50-50 split, and they actually pass the ball less. It's been the case with Jimmy G. It was the case with Trey Lance for a little bit as they were trying to ease him in, albeit he was playing in a monsoon. I like Higby a lot more over Kittle. Jared Goff and Geno Smith, I think, are a wash right now. So, Eli, I'm being honest with you, I would probably knock that trade down. I would use Cooper Kupp for some leverage. I think Higby is a way better player than George Kittle right now, given the usage. Given the fact that, we're seeing a 20% difference here. LA runs the ball, that'd be 31% of the time. LA throws the ball, 69% of the time. San Francisco throws the ball 49% of the time. That's where I'm at on this. I think just from a sheer usage standpoint, then you look at the fact that Higby's got more catches, he's got more yards, he's got more touchdowns than George Kittle at the moment. He actually doesn't have any touchdowns, but he's been doing his job in pretty much every other department. So I'm gonna say strike that trade down if I'm you. Would you trade Hopkins and David Montgomery? This is A's question for Amon-Ra or Swift, and Higby is my current tight end. And Higby, my current tight end, is Kittle. Okay. Would you trade Hopkins, DeAndre Hopkins? There's an ad. And Montgomery for Amon-Ra or Swift and Higby. Amon-Ra or Swift and Higby. I think Amon-Ra and Swift are both top 10 at their position right now in fantasy. When Swift is healthy. Swift is not healthy right now. So that's not the best look. And Jamal Williams has been poaching touchdowns. So maybe I'll retract that statement in the future. My current tight end is Kittle. I like the upgrade from Kittle to Higby. You have Hopkins and Montgomery for Amon-Ra. Let's say we go Amon-Ra and Higby. Hopkins. I mean, you've got a lot of unknowns. You could have some rust. How much, right? How much is Kyler Murray going to use him off the bat? I know that sounds silly. It's DeAndre freaking Hopkins. He's coming off suspension. You never know what you're going to get out of guys. You know, we get very odd scenarios out of the NFL all the time. I mean, this is a very stretched out example using Josh Gordon, but it's a guy who can never really get in his groove because he comes back in and then the NFL suspends him. So David Montgomery's a good all-purpose back. His yards per carry hasn't been up there, and Khalil Herbert is freaking phenomenal. But the thing with David Montgomery is as soon as he comes back, even though Khalil Herbert just had the best week, it would be the best week in David Montgomery's career because he had 157 yards on the ground. Look what happens. I'm getting rid of ads. Look what happens as soon as David Montgomery comes back. He gets more usage. Comes back for week 5, 12 rushes for 20 yards. Not the best usage, right? But actually it is because 4 receptions for 62 yards. He's an all-purpose back. He'll do well, even if he's not producing very well. I mean, the Bears are built around that right now. They run the ball a ton. An absolute ton. Yep, they still do. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. The Bears run the ball more than anybody else in the league. So, and you've got an all-purpose back in Montgomery. All right, so let's break this down, eh? Hopkins and DeMont for Amon-Ra or Swift and Higby. Higby is he is an upgrade over Kittle. I'm actually going to call Montgomery and a healthy Swift, although he's not healthy, a wash. Hopkins and Amon-Ra. I think you win that. I think that could go either way, but I think that you've got more upside in Amon-Ra St. Brown right now, considering that he's playing football and he's not going to have to get worked back into an offense where, I mean, look, Marquise Brown is no scrub, especially after last year. He was top 15 in multiple categories. Maybe that ends up being a 1A, 1B scenario. With Amon-Ra St. Brown, you know he's the guy right now. Even with the revolving door and the depth of the wide receiver chart with Detroit. Yeah. So ditching Hopkins for Amon-Ra. I'm going to go Amon-Ra over Swift. Because this is a high-flying offense that loves to throw the ball on Jared Goff. Ditching Montgomery. For Higby. And you could just ditch Kittle, to be honest. Or you could try and get include Kittle in a package for somebody more valuable. Yeah, if you go Hopkins and Montgomery for Amon-Ra and Higby or something along those lines, I think you're coming out on top by a little bit. Wide receivers right now are Kupp, Hopkins, Deontay Johnson, Keenan Allen, and Drake London. Great lineup. Once Keenan Allen's healthy, you're going to be great. I mean, Cooper Kupp, I talked about using him as a trade package if you're 0-5, like one of my other guys here was earlier, and not to like push you out or anything like that. Eli, I mean, I think you're making a great investment by dealing out Cooper Kupp and getting a high tier tight end and a consistent guy like Mike Evans. So yeah, I go Hopkins, DeMont for Amon-Ra and Higby. I think would be a good trade. I really do. I think you'd win that by a decent amount, considering the circumstances right now. If an injury happens, if there's an adjustment, you have to keep this in mind. You've got to do your research, just like I'm doing right now. See who ends up getting used more down the road. Is there a change in the depth chart? Is there a Cam Akers, Darrell Henderson situation going on? I don't think it's going to get to that point with Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift, which that wouldn't even impact this end of the trade. But yeah, great team. Running backs right now are Kamara, Montgomery, Breece Hall, Kareem Hunt, and James Robinson. That is solid. Robinson, even with the usage of ETN, has been great. We talk about running back by committees. You can make it work. Teams are running a lot more plays. You're seeing a lot more hurry-up offense. You're seeing quarterbacks go out and yell can, or kill, and just default back to running. It's getting our running backs a lot more points. Full PPR as well. That's what I'll go with, eh? Thanks, man. You're the GOAT. I appreciate you too, Joseph. This is the last question. Eli, thank you for subscribing, man. We're going to make this a consistent thing. Look at those shorts for start 2, sit 1, doing everything I can to make, like I said, when guys get on the field, you can't really control anything. But if you do in-depth research, I think you increase your chances a lot. And, I won a decent amount of money last year. I think it was $100 and a $20 entry fee in my first time doing money leagues. Like seriously, like I would consider that a decent entry fee as opposed to $5 or $10. Broke college student here, so that's what we're talking about at the moment for serious money. But in my money leagues in general that I've done, I've had a lot of success with this in-depth research, talking about things like target share, talking about things like snap count, run pass splits, scenarios. Do I think this team's going to lose by a lot, then throw the ball? Do I think this team's going to win by a lot? Let me use my running back so they can run down that time in garbage time. So last question of the day, would you trade Demont for Goddard and Kirk? Considering he's coming off 12 rushes for 20 yards, I'm not sure you get Goddard and Kirk for Demont. If they're willing to accept that, I mean, you have, in my opinion, and by the stats, a top 5 tight end in a high volume passing offense. Even though Jalen Hurts runs it a ton, he's really just taking some of Miles Sanders' carries. And then you have Christian Kirk. And I mean, here's what we're talking about, right? 47.75%. I'm talking before. That's passing play percentage. So you'd be worried. But you can't be too worried when Goddard's putting up numbers like this. 29th in the league in receptions. I think he's going to continue to get that usage. If you can get Goddard and Kirk, the 1A in Jacksonville for David Montgomery, I say do it. They're going to use him a lot, but he's not averaging a whole lot of yards per carry after, 12 for 20 against the Minnesota Vikings defense, which, mind you, I know he's coming off an injury, but the Vikings allow a crap ton of rushing yards, roughly 5 yards per carry before that performance, which is a safer bet between the first and second trade. Hopkins and Demont for Amon-Ra or Swift and Higby. Okay. Safer bet between Amon-Ra and Swift? I want Amon-Ra right now because he's healthy. It was questionable, but he played. I want Amon-Ra. So Hopkins and Demont for Amon-Ra and Higby. That's what I would go with. Personally. So that's all I'm going to do right now, folks. I do appreciate all of you coming in, stopping on the stream. I'm going to do some other things like, hey, I mean, we did pickups. I'm going to do like 5 or 6 drops. People you should get out of your lineup. Get them out of there. Don't let them in. Kick them to the curb. Maybe try and, if they have some decent value, if you can, I don't want to say trick opponents into taking them, but if they're coming off a decent week and it doesn't mean a whole lot when it comes to the longevity, and we'll talk about all that later, you kick them. But we'll talk about some players that you should definitely just get rid of at a certain point as well. But this was 6 ads with waivers. As always, this is going to be a routine. After that, I try and answer as many fantasy football questions as I can. As more and more and more come in throughout the end of this stream, I'm going to answer them separately. I'll go in the comments, tag you, and give you a thorough answer of what I think I would do. Never going to tell you what to do, just going to give you a thorough analysis, plenty of research, and do what I think gives you the best chance to succeed. But I do hope all of you have a great, great rest of your day. Great, best of luck with your fantasy matchups going into this week. Stay tuned for more streams. Like and subscribe if you enjoy what, content you're consuming. Stay tuned for the shorts, and we will see you next time. I appreciate all of you.